we saw the p-value approach with the two-tail. Guess what? You can also do a hypothesis testing using confidence interval when you have a two-tail. All right, so this is nice to be able to see two different approaches for the two-tail hypothesis testing. Okay, so when testing your hypothesis versus your null, when you have your null versus your alternative hypothesis, and specifically the two-tail, this doesn't go for everything, this goes for the two-tail only, all right? The confidence, whatever percentage confidence interval contains my initial, do not reject the null. However, if the confidence interval does not contain what we talked about originally, we can conclude that it is not at the level of significance. All right? So here's the moral of the story. Let me get my highlighter. If it contains, do not reject. That means it's part of it. Well, no duh. If we are, let's say, 95% confident that my information that we already know is in the interval, then what we already know is in that interval. So we're 95% confident that it's there. If it's not in the interval, does not contain, trying to get a different color, does not contain this, that's whenever we reject. Doesn't say reject, so we're going to write it. That's when you reject that null. All right? Okay. So let's do this. A 2009 study at Princeton Survey Research Associates International found that 34% of teenagers text while driving. Does a recent study conducted by Consumer Reports that found, I ought to just highlight it, right, because we're there, found that 353 of 1,200 randomly selected teens had texted while driving, suggests that the proportion who text while driving has, what? Changed, means does not equal. That's how I know we can do this. We're going to use a 95% confidence interval to answer this question. Now, is there a level of significance here? No, but we're looking at 95% confidence interval, so basically we're looking at the same thing, right? 0.05 of that level of significance, or 95% confident. All right, and then here's my 34%. That's how I know that's that P naught. That's what we're starting with, and we're determining if it has changed, all right, with the new one. Okay, so let's lay it out. The first thing that we want to do is lay out our null hypothesis and our alternative hypothesis. Again, we're talking about a proportion here. So with a proportion, I'm using the variable P. If it were talking about a mean, we're going to talk about next, then you would use the symbol for mean. But now we're talking about proportion. So what do we currently know? That it's at 0.34. Right? What are we trying to say? That it has changed from that. That's what it means. It's changed from that. Now, let's create our confidence interval. Guess what? We're literally going to the same place. We're talking about proportions. Yeah, so go back to proportions. Stat. Proportion stats, one sample with summary. We are living here. Chapters 9 and 10, both. We're living in the same places. Our successes was 353 out of the 1,200. And you guys should be doing this on your computers too, right? Because that's the whole point of this. I'm not doing a hypothesis test. I'm back to my confidence interval. Same place, right? Okay, so in my confidence interval, and it's a 95%, remember we keep it at standard walled, and then you compute. I'm going to scoot this up in the corner so that I can write at the same time. All right, so I know that my lower limit and my upper limit, so my lower limit is let's go 4 again, 0.2684. So 0.2684. And my upper limit is 0.3199. All right. I'm going to scoot this over so we can see the whole thing. We've got our info off of there that we needed. Now, this is what I'm looking at. I know that my lower limit here, if I'm going to make this interval, I'm going from 2684 up to 3199. However, if the confidence interval does not contain what I originally start with, is that contained in this interval? No. This 0.34 is outside of my interval. My interval only goes from 0.26 up to 0.32, basically, right? So, because 0.34 is not within the bounds, is not within the bounds of the interval. Man, my handwriting is so bad. I'm so glad you guys are patient. Is there sufficient evidence to change my mind? Yes, because we are rejecting this, right? It does not contain it. Yeah, I'm 95% confident that my information should be here. Is my information there? No. So that means it's different. It's different. My new survey is different. So yeah, there is sufficient evidence. There is sufficient evidence to conclude, we have to write all that out, that the proportion of teens who text while driving, proportion of teens who text while driving has changed, that's a G, has changed since 2009. Boom. All right. Okay, now, just for fun, let's talk about this for a second. So, in 2009, they're saying the proportion is 0.34. Look at the new, we are 95% confident that this is the new percentage of teens that are texting while driving. What do we know? Has fewer teens text while driving or more teens text while driving? Fewer, right? I mean, that's not what the question asked, but come on. Here's the limit, and we know the point estimate is halfway between this, and then that's just my cushion to get to the lower and the upper. But if this is outside to the high end, that's what it was in 2009. That means, according to this survey that was conducted, as long as they're telling the truth, we all know surveys have bias, but that's part of whenever you read through this, you just take all that stuff into account. But it definitely has changed, and this is showing that fewer teens, right, text while driving. Sometimes it's nice just to think about that a little bit and just make sure that we see what's going on. That's the beauty of using the confidence intervals. You kind of get more data instead of just asking the question if we keep it or reject it, and that's it. With the hypothesis testing, we just say keep or reject. With the confidence intervals, we can get a little bit more info out of it. So I think that's kind of cool. Right? Look at us, hypothesis testing, figuring this stuff out. Now we're getting to some legit hardcore statistics. This is cool. You guys are doing awesome. I'm so proud of you.